just after 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you're joining us live, we want to welcome you. We've got a nice little panel of folks today. Alina's here, and Mr. Scott C. and Mr. Scott J. Welcome, guys. We're here to talk, just have a casual conversation about where we're at in the economy today, the world today, and how we can begin to do things to prepare to protect our family legacy moving forward. So again, we're excited you're here with us and tuning in. This is going to be good. We don't have specific things planned, but I want to start out with a question for everybody today. And since we've just got one lady in the room, Aline, I'm going to start with you, and then we will move over to the guys. So we've seen a lot of interesting things happening since our new president took office, and particularly in the realm of tariffs. And we saw the stock market and economic scare initially, and then we saw quite the interesting boost in the stock market and the positive repercussions. Aline, how has what's happening in our economy, in our government, and how it's impacting the world affected your thinking? And what do you personally plan to do moving forward to position yourself and your family to protect your legacy?
That's a very interesting question and a very good one to ask because of what it has done to the economy with the price of everything going up. And because of the price of everything going up, it puts people in panic mode, especially if you're not prepared to weather this storm of all of a sudden eggs, for example, at $2.99 a dozen is $8 a dozen. Do you have room in your budget to afford moving forward to eat eggs, or are you going to quit eating eggs because now it's $8 or $6? So that's a question that is making people panic. And the great thing for me in my personal financial situation is that the way it was set up is it doesn't matter what's going on with politics, with economy, with the stock market, because the way I set up my life is so that I can weather whatever storms comes because of everything that is put in place. But it is a great question to ask. What are we going to do in this situation? And if we're not prepared, and that's why I love this conversation we're having, because if you're not prepared, you will go to panic mode. But because we're prepared, we know exactly what we need to do. And I'm looking forward to even more of these conversations.
Well, that's powerful feedback, Elaine. And we think about how much panic and fear affects our not only our thought processes but our decision making. And so I
Mhm.
love what you said about being positioned to weather the storm. So we can hear the news, we can be aware of what's going on, but it doesn't have to set off an alarm. We can know that we're protected and we're positioned, and we may not have the liberty to maybe spend as freely as we do at certain times, but we're also not panicking about how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to put, food on the table? How am I going to buy those eggs that I eat a lot of every single day? And those egg whites that Caleb drinks like water every day are not inexpensive, if you will. So, Scott's, moving over to you guys. I'll let either one of you go ahead and go first. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing in our local economy and government and global impact?
Go ahead, Scott Johnson.
All right. So it's been an interesting 100 days, 110 days or so. And I think economically, a lot of people in this country have done exactly what both of you, Aline and Caleb, said. A lot of fear, a lot of fear. And we've tried from a financial standpoint, and this came from Scott Christensen almost 20 years ago in my life. There are two thought processes. They both come from Scripture. For me, one is faith, not fear. Faith, not fear. I've tried to raise my children to believe that faith, not fear, needs to be your motivator, needs to be your end result, needs to drive whatever you're going to do. So faith, not fear. And so we've done that with our clients. You know, I think of the fact that on Saturday afternoon, I turned on the radio, a local radio station, and there are 4 financial planners in my valley who get on the radio on Saturday, and all of them were talking fear. It was amazing to me. These guys are trying to make a living by advertising this, and it was all about what to do with the stock market when this stuff happens. And it's all the traditional stuff. There's nothing wrong with it, but it was based on fear. They were speaking about their own fear. They were speaking about their clients' fear and how to deal with it. And I thought to myself, hey, wrong approach. Wrong approach. We have in our firm, based on what Scott Christensen taught me years ago, we've tried to build everything around the idea that I don't care what the stock market does. I don't care what politics does. I mean, I don't really mean I don't care. What I mean is financially, it means nothing based on our planning. It means it has no impact whatsoever. Everybody says, my client started calling me. Oh, I haven't had a client call me at all about the stock market or about the politics. And I've got clients on all sides of the aisle. Literally, I got clients on the far left, far right, and everything in between. And based on our planning, it has nothing to do with it. The fact that we planned around guarantees, the fact that we planned around long-term thinking, the fact that we planned around a fundamental thought process that things are not going to be the way they have been previously. How do we plan for that? To me, that's made all the difference in the world. Faith, not fear. And if you are prepared, you shall not fear. If you are prepared, you shall not fear. Eileen mentioned preparation. We are prepared. We're trying to teach our people to be prepared. And it doesn't take a lot of dramatic changes. It just takes a thinking change. There's a thought process here. This has to do with shifting a paradigm and how you do that. So anyway, that's where my head goes, Caleb.
That's great feedback, Scott. I mean, it really is as simple as we say simple, but it takes some time. It takes some discipline to start thinking differently, seeing differently. Scott Christensen, if people are already in that state of fear and panic, what would you say to them, or what steps should they take to begin shifting away from that? Because we know that fear can be very paralyzing for people. What would you say to them?
Well, I think both Aline and Scott have laid it out that the reality is that we have to have some understanding of how money really works. One of the things that we haven't talked a lot about for a while is this concept of or idea of financial self-reliance. And if you don't have it yet, Aline has talked about being prepared, so she's not concerned. She can weather the storms, and that's. Many people are not prepared to weather these financial storms. But first off, if they're not, then they've got to change their mindset. We have talked many times amongst ourselves about how the economic future is different. We're in a new financial paradigm that requires a new way of thinking, as Scott Johnson mentioned. And that's the first thing. If you're not prepared, you have to understand, hey, things are not as they have been in the past. We can't continue doing what we've been doing, because if we do, we'll get the results that we've always got, the definition of insanity. So what we need to do is, if you haven't done it already, you need to immediately begin to design and implement a financial planning process or a lifestyle process that embraces the idea of financial self-reliance. Now, what do we mean by that? We teach a concept called the family banking system, and it's about controlling. It's all about controlling all the areas of finance in your life. That's debt, as Aline knows, as we know, debt is very crippling. It's very challenging, and it's part of what creates the fear. Is that I have all this outgo and I don't have enough income to cover all my expenses because they don't have control. And the family banking system allows people to regain control. Now, it's not immediate. But over time, you can shift the process of being reliant on outside financial institutions, your student loans, your car loans, your credit cards, all the things that you don't have much control over. You begin to take control of those things. You redirect cash flows and assets in such a way that you can dictate, so that when prices do go up, if you need to modify your payment schedule, you don't have to ask anyone. You don't have to call up your financial institution and say, hey, listen, I'm really struggling. Will you give me a little bit of slack? Will you give me some breathing room? Because typically they don't want to, and that puts you in a position where you're having to ask somebody else. You're not in control. Same thing with our retirement accounts. We're not in control. It's kind of interesting. If you ask someone how much money they have in their retirement account, and they can tell you how much they have. He says, if you ask them, though, is that correct? And they say, well, sure it is. That's what my statement says. Well, a couple of things. First off is that it may be correct today, but it may not be correct tomorrow. You could have more, you could have a lot less. But in addition to that, I was talking to someone here the other day, and I mentioned to them, I said, take a look at your statement from your retirement account and see how it was mailed to you or how it was delivered to you. What does it say on the statement? And it basically lists the financial institution that your money is with, it names them, calls them a custodian, and then after that, it says FBO, for the benefit of. So you don't actually own your retirement account until you pull the money out. And then when you pull the money out, there's some tax consequences. My point in all of this is that in very few areas are people, particularly middle-class America, and I'm talking about people, middle-class America could be up to a couple of $100,000 a year of income, of household income. They're not in control of their finances. They're not financially self-reliant. They don't have the ability to make the adjustments that they need. And so that's something that we want our clients to know and understand, is that there is a way for you to create a scenario where you, as Scott mentioned, Scott Johnson, he said, his clients, he doesn't get calls because the market's down 10% this year because of all the, even though it's come back up yesterday, there was I think it was the Dow was up 11 or 1200 points. Today it's down 200 or 300, something like that. There's so much volatility. There's so much unpredictability, and you have no way of knowing what that's going to be. So we talk about liquidity, use, control, and certainty. 4 of the 5 filters that we want people to look at their financial affairs through: liquidity, use, control, certainty, and enjoyment. How much enjoyment do you get out of your 401k? So back to the idea of financial self-reliance, putting yourself in the driver's seat so that if the market goes down, you are not significantly impacted. If the market goes up, you're happy about it, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of my take on it.
There's some extraordinary insights there, Scott. Again, creating certainty and FBO, for the benefit of. Who are we really benefiting? Who are our retirement accounts really benefiting? If they're not directly benefiting us, they should be. And we want to help show you that there's ways for you to do that. Again, putting you back in the driver's seat is what this is all about. You should be in control of your legacy. Aline, I'm going to move back over to you here. We talked about this idea of procrastination being a killer of many things, and how when we procrastinate, from fear, we're paralyzed. We don't want to take action. We don't want to move, when that is exactly what we should be doing when we reach that emotional state. What would you say to people on how they can begin to, I don't know if fall in love is the right term, but they can begin to embrace the process of preparing for their future and their family legacy? Whether there's so many people, they're afraid to open the bank account, right? They're afraid to balance the checkbook. They don't want to talk about death or retirement or money. And so they avoid all of those things. But I think it goes without saying, for the 4 of us, we've really embraced and fallen in love with that process. And it's the extension of why we want to help serve other people in doing this. So what would you say to people, or what are you helping people do to begin to embrace this process and have a love and an appreciation for taking the necessary steps that they need to?
Yeah, Caleb, again, interesting question. Usually what I would ask somebody in that situation is, what do you want? And depending on the answers is how we're going to proceed with what we need to do for you to fall in love. What do I mean by what do you want? A lot of people in this situation, whether it is fear, whether it is I want to change my financial situation, I want financial freedom, I want more money in the bank, I want a good credit, I want to get rid of my debt. Those are just words. If no actions are put together for those words to become reality, they remain words and your situation does not change. And that's what a lot of people are accustomed to do, because the system is set up for people to just say words all the time and do nothing about those words. I think, for example, the LA fire, we all know LA is California is a dry land. And so every year there is fire somewhere in California that happens. Imagine living in an area that's prone for fire, and yet you do not have an escape route. You do not have a bag that's ready with your emergency tools, emergency everything, so that when the alarm goes off, you get up and you pick up your bag and you know exactly the escape route, and then you follow it and you make it out safe. Now, if you don't have that, when the fire comes, obviously you're going to panic. And we've seen it on the news, people who are holding on dearly to their homes. They don't want to let go of their home. Why? It just stinks, right? So if we are prepared and someone is in a dire situation and they're already diving in and they're already struggling and they're not ready to define what they want, it's going to be very hard for them to navigate this financial world that we're living in, because they're not going to know which direction they want to go. So the first thing we want to do with people is, whether it's at home, people listening right now live, or people who are going to be listening on it on replay, is the first question you want to answer is, what do I want? Because if you're able to answer the question, what do I want, then you're going to be able to change your mindset. That's going to take you to the result that you want. We mentioned that over here because I was trying to take some notes over here. You, Kelly, mentioned that your thought produces your actions, your results. So imagine, I don't have, I'm broke, I don't have money. That's a thought. What is that thought is going to do? It's going to free you up because you don't have money. You're not going to have the drive in you to go out and find money, or to even find the what we're talking about today, a family banking system that can get you out of that situation. Or you're not going to do nothing because the thought is, I don't have money. And as a result, you're going to remain in your situation. But if you change that thought as, okay, instead of saying I don't have money, you say, how can I make more money? Or what can I do to get myself out of this situation? All of a sudden, that thought sends a message to your brain to drive you to do some action that's going to produce the results that you want. So, what do you want? Answer that question, and then you'll know where to go.
Such a great analogy, Elaine. And it's a question we should all be asking ourselves on a regular basis. Because I'm going to come back around and ask you how many clients and prospects that you run into who don't have an answer to that question and who don't really know. But there was something you said about this whole abundance mindset. And I was watching a clip of Lewis House, who is very well known, has a big podcast channel, and speaker and successful entrepreneur, and recently released a book about abundance. But he was sharing the story about how he started doing one simple confession every single day consistently. And it was around the lines of, money comes to me freely and abundantly. I see it everywhere. I recognize it. And so as he was doing this, personal beta test, if you will, one day he ran across a penny on the ground, and immediately his mind goes, oh, it's a penny, that's insignificant, whatever. I don't need to pick it up. But he said, no, I'm doing this confession, and this is part of my experiment, right? That money comes to me freely. Well, he picks up that penny, and it's got the date of 1945 on it, interestingly enough. And he turns it around, looks at the back, and it's one of those rare wheat pennies. He goes online and Googles it, and the one that most recently sold for $4,500. So because he was willing to pick up that penny, which most people would have written off as being insignificant because he believed that abundance was coming to him freely, he literally picked up $4,500 off the ground. And I thought that was such an incredibly powerful testament that when we are consciously aware and we believe that, we recognize something that we think maybe before was insignificant, but it could be an incredible financial turning point or opportunity for us. And then another thing that you said was, helping people create this financial GPS system, right? We are so reliant and dependent upon technology. And it came up in convo yesterday with my 4-year-old and my 7-year-old. We were talking about driving somewhere, navigation system. And I said, you know what, guys? Did you know that you can learn to read a map and a road atlas to get you where you want to go? So if, God forbid, that phone's not working, or there's a electromagnetic, an EMP goes off, and all the phones and everything are cut off, you could still get to where you're going. But most people are so comfortable, so dependent, so reliant. Things are good. My bills are paid. I got a good paying job. I don't need to worry about, I don't need to change anything until the poopy hits the fan, the rug gets pulled out from under them. So, Scotts, why don't you guys follow up a bit on this original question, and then we'll come back to you, Aline, about how many people you're running into who don't have an answer to that question.
I love what Aline just taught us, because it comes down to simplicity. When Aline just said, "What do you want? What do you want?" Everybody needs to wake up in the morning and ask that very same question. What do you want? Because in the end, it's so simple. And I guess that's part of the process. Words matter here. We all recognize words matter. They get in the way. Language gets in the way. We use phrases that we're trying to clearly help people understand. And if your definition and my definition aren't the same, then our conversations fall apart. So I just really appreciate where Aline was taking us with. Just ask yourself, what do you want? We deal with people every day. You guys, it's not hard to look online. It's not hard to watch the local news. It's not hard to watch the national news and recognize that people are living, what do we call them? Lives of quiet desperation. Lives of quiet desperation. And now not so quiet anymore. Again, partly because the questions you asked at the beginning, lives of quiet desperation. I said to somebody the other day, it appears to me that you are happy to be unhappy. It was a thought that just hit. You appear to be happy to be unhappy. Well, yeah, I just don't know where to go. You guys, part of what we're doing for people is expanding their vision, giving them a dream that doesn't have to be a dream, let alone a nightmare. Because people are waking up every morning trying to figure out, what do I do with this nightmare I'm living in? And the answers really are simple. You have to do what Aline just said. Ask yourself, what do I want? And then for me, it's connecting ourselves. Relationships are all we really have in this life. It may be a relationship to a person. It might be a relationship to a book. It might be a relationship to your faith. But relationships are what make the difference. And asking yourself, where's this relationship taking me? Is this relationship building me? Am I growing from this? Am I a better person tomorrow rather than today because of the book that I read, the podcast I listened to, the people that I spent my time with, etc. And so in the process of that happening, you come back and say, I'm tired of being happy to be unhappy. We all recognize anybody in America waking up this morning looks around and goes, there is something wrong. They know it. There's something wrong. And I am the answer. It's not they, because that's what we want to do. We want to throw it to somebody else. they're the problem. And our judgment just go through the roof. And it's ridiculous. I am the problem. I recognize it, but I am also the solution. And my relationships can make a difference in how I deal with that problem, and taking my thought process from quiet desperation to absolute joy for the simple reality of life itself. Just waking up in the morning and saying, I'm alive. I'm alive. Look around me. You watch some of those people. We use the example of the California fire. You watch some of those people. It was a joyous moment to watch some of those people get online and say, we have each other. Of course we lost everything. That's called fire. That's called life. That's called the mortal experience. But we have each other. The relationships are what matter. So I'm just suggesting that in our relationships, we recognize there's the value. What do we do? How do we build these relationships with each other, with the people who are listening to us, with our family members, so that we take the thinking process to the next level with just gratitude. Anyway.
Powerful insights. It's almost like you're saying gratitude attitude will overcome fear and procrastination and indifference. Scott Christensen, what do you got to say?
Well, I think everybody's on the right track here. Everything from what Aline said to Scott said. And if we really break it down, not one experience, nothing happens on this planet without thought. Absolutely nothing happens. And so it all begins in here. How we think, what we think, it starts there. And if we can focus on just like this individual's mantra of abundance comes to me easily. I'm surrounded by abundance, and things are going to turn out great for me. Money will flow to me. That may sound silly to some people, but there is something about that thought process. The great Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach, he talks about this, something he calls the R factor question. What would have to happen for me to be happy or feel good about my progress if I were 3 years into the future looking back? If I were in the future looking back about what has happened over the last 3 years, what would I like to see happen? Well, that very process of thinking about it, of getting a vision in your mind of what it would look like. You're projecting yourself 3 years into the future. You're looking back and saying, okay, these things were accomplished. Well, how did they get accomplished? It started with your thinking about what the future looked like. Then you literally, whether the universe takes over or you just begin to will the events into place. Now, is it going to work out perfectly? The answer is no. Are there going to be some roadblocks? Are there some obstacles, some areas that you're going to need to really get focused and dig in and maybe take a detour? That happens all the time, but that's just the way life is. The question becomes one of, are you going to take those challenges as challenges, or are you going to say, well, I'm defeated? And again, it's all about thinking. It's 100% about your thoughts. So, as Scott Johnson mentioned, this idea of having gratitude, people don't understand the power. They do not understand the power of getting up every day and having gratitude. And that, Caleb, you and I have talked a little bit about Ryan Holiday and his thinking process. The obstacle is the way. The obstacle is the way. And that's, it's hard for people because we want life to be easy. We don't want obstacles. We want a clear, easy path. But that doesn't build us into capable people, because the other side of it is, if you give someone who's never had money, who never has had abundance, if you give them abundance, it's not too long. It's kind of like what you said, Scott Johnson. So, you're happy about being unhappy. You're happy to be unhappy. Well, there's a lot of people that are happier in a scarcity mindset than they are in an abundance mindset. Because what is it about lottery winners? Within 3 to 5 years, they are back to right where they were because they didn't shift mentally. So without belaboring the point, it's all about your thoughts. If you don't have the positive attitude, if you don't have the belief that things are going to turn out well, they're probably not going to turn out well.
Wow, phenomenal thought processes within teaching us how we should transform our thought processes. And again, guys, what we're talking about here is creating a personal roadmap for yourself. And where does it start? It begins in your mind, visually. As you know, we'll come back to this, Aline. As Aline said at the beginning here, what do you want for your life? What is it that you're trying to create? We could go above and beyond. Why are we here? What am I doing? What I'm doing? But with where you're at right now, within your life, your job, your personal life, your relationships, I know again, the core of this community and the why behind why we wanted to come together and build this community is because it is all about people. It's about relationships. It's about coming together and saying, okay, we all want something better for our lives and for our children and for our grandchildren, as any good, loving parent or family member would. But again, it comes down to, are we willing to take the steps, change our lives, transform our thinking, and then implement the things that we learn, right? Because knowledge without proper application is mute. It doesn't become wisdom until we apply the things that we learn and we see them work in our own lives. And again, we've often had the conversation about being products of the products. We believe in the processes, in the systems, and in the tools that we equip our clients with because we've seen them work in our own lives, because we've seen the mindset transformation and shifts happen in our own lives. So back to this question, Aline, how many people are you running across when you ask them that question that just really have no idea what they want? It's kind of painful, the process of it, isn't it? To get asked that question and go, I don't know if I really know. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And so when you get that rise out of them, what do you say to them? Just to start with, what percentage of people you would say don't really have a clear understanding of what they want?
Too many to count, Caleb. Unfortunately, too many to count. People not be able to answer that question. What do I want? It sounds so simple because it is that simple. And unfortunately, people like to complicate the answer to that question because of the air in which we're living in. You have TikToks, you have Instagram that portray the greatest life, that portrays I have arrived, and then this is how I did it, and it was so quick, overnight success. So what? Somewhat overnight success, and everybody thinks that is attainable for everybody. And then all of a sudden, when you ask somebody a question, what do you want? They have that idea that that's what I want, but then they're looking at the current situation and realize I can't get there with where I am right now. And all of a sudden that question becomes very complicated to answer. Because what goes to someone's mind is they look at a bank account, it has no money. They look maybe at the credit, they have no money. They look at their family legacy, there's nothing there. They look, all of a sudden, all those things flash in front of their eyes and there's nothing to show for. And it's like, I don't know. The answer is I don't know. And it's a terrible situation to be in and not be able to answer that question. I used to be in that position where that question, it tripped me. That's what it's like. If I don't know that answer, I can't put any action. Scott mentioned that everything starts with your mind, with your thoughts. If you don't have the right kind of attitude inside your mind, you won't be able to move forward with your life. You won't be able to change your situation. You have to be able to change your mindset to be able to change your situation. just a quick parenthesis. I just saw something very beautiful. So because I'm mobile this morning, I am in my car doing this conversation. And I saw a couple coming out of their car, and the woman, it's a man and a wife, and I just thought it was beautiful. So I'm sharing with you guys. But she could barely walk, and she got out of the car, and I see it. I thought they were going for breakfast, but they go to a dance studio because the dance studio is in front of me, and they go inside. They turn on the light, and now I can see them dancing, and they all this couple. So, anyways, it was beautiful. But it got me to be thinking that imagine that couple at this old age still dancing. They didn't just wake up this morning and learn how to dance or learning how to dance. That's probably something they've been accustomed to doing. They had their answer to that question years and years ago, and now they're just living that life that they want. And that's why what people have to realize that for you to attain to where you want to be, Scott mentioned this, you got to change your mindset. Mindset is everything. But because of the society that we live in, we are just, how do I put it, conditioned to do what people say you need to do. So it's hard for people to change who they are because they have no idea. They have nobody in front of them. And Scott Johnson mentioned this, that you are the problem and you also are the solution. If you can accept that, that's our mindset shift that people need to adopt. And not many people realize that they are the solution. They're always looking to somebody else to be that solution. And it's hard to live like that, very hard to live like that.
What a beautiful story, Elaine, and a reminder that our answers are often already right here inside of us. We may be the problem. Can we get out of our own way and become the solution that we're seeking? And we're here to wholeheartedly affirm to you that we know that you can. We absolutely are convinced that you can. And this little tool right here can be our captor, that we can be a prisoner of, or it can become our liberator. It can become the gateway to our personal freedoms, our freedoms from addictions, our freedoms from broken relationships, and our freedom from financial poverty. Again, many of you have heard my story. I did not grow up with much. And it was, many, many decades of stinking thinking and limiting poverty, lack, deficiency mindsets that had to be broken off my mind and my life. It's like peeling an onion. It's layer after layer, and you think you've arrived, and you go, "Oh crap! There's another layer down here that I got to dig out of the way." So again, guys, as we kind of wrap this up, we're reaching the end here, but we hope that we've provided an extraordinary amount of value. I want to thank both Scotts and Aline for their transparency today, for their sincerity. And we do what we do because we love people. We don't just love our families. And yeah, we want to protect our families and provide something greater for our children and our children's children. But we want to do this for families across America, and we continue to do this. But it requires a level of trust and confidence, but it also requires people realizing that there are folks out there like us who care more about people, who we care more about you and your future than you begin to realize. And we know there's plenty of people. Somebody had mentioned early on, Scott Johnson, those financial advisors, playing on fear. And it is, you can sell people on fear. You can, sometimes get people to take action out of fear. But how much more would it mean for you to have certainty, to have financial efficiency, to have options? Scott Christensen, you say this a lot, right? The power of liquidity. When you don't have money, you don't have options. When you have money, you've got options and you can weather that storm. So Scott Johnson and Scott Christensen, closing thoughts and comments from you both, and then we'll wrap it up today.
I love doing this. I love being with people that I care about and that I know care about humanity. And part of the reason that I enjoy this kind of process is, you just said it, Caleb. We love people. People, you'll go out there today and you'll experience people. You'll experience relationship. Aline, the example you just used of the couple. Somewhere along the line, we begin to realize that our lives are made meaningful by the relationships that exist. That couple you just mentioned, think about the relationships that will exist today in your world, all the way through to the end of the day when you hit the sack and then wake up tomorrow morning. It's filled with relationships, and it's somehow, I believe, that I have an obligation, and I think we have an obligation to enhance those relationships. Those people's lives are supposed to be better today because we were in it. And I know that sounds a little bit arrogant, but what I mean by it is because I know things, I have things, I've done things, I've been taught things that I can share with others. And to me, that's the value of doing this. And I see tremendous value in doing this live on social media so that other people can hear me say it, because there are people in my life right now who don't understand on my social media, that don't understand what I do and how I do it and why I do it. So for me, I see value in doing this. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Scott. Scott Christensen, closing comments.
Yeah, I'm struck by the idea, and you mentioned this the other day in a conversation that we were having another training call, and that was this idea of community. One of the challenges I think a lot of people have is that in their relationships, a lot of times, most everybody is in kind of the same pattern, the same thought process, or the same situation, and it becomes difficult in some cases for people to get out of that thinking because everyone around them is in the same position, and they all have, it's not herd mentality. I don't mean it that way. I'm just saying that we have a tendency to live more in a scarcity mindset. And one of the things we're trying to create with the Prosperity Producer Alliance, PPA, is a community where you can become involved with us, to associate with us in such a way that on a constant basis, there's positive affirmations coming your way. There's a positive support group, and that whole you're affiliating and associating with people that they have an attitude of gratitude. They are looking to do great things. And when I say great things, I'm not talking about climbing Mount Everest. I'm just talking about sometimes just shifting a person's thinking on one particular thought, one area, could be a great thing. Small, big changes are accomplished by small incremental changes and shifts over time. And that's what we're looking at doing is providing an environment and a platform for you to plug in and enjoy the conversation, join in the conversation. But when you leave this call, we hope that we've provided some, not only some financial insights, but some life insights, so that you begin to focus on the power that you have, that you can begin to gain control. As Scott Johnson said, it's all, if it is to be, it's up to me. And that's different than, well, it's somebody else's fault, it's somebody else's problem. And if the world were different, my life would be different. When in fact, what happens is that when you are different, the world is different, and in a powerful way. So that's kind of my thinking. And again, thanks for hosting and moderating and drawing this conversation out from us today. I appreciate your efforts on that.
Absolutely, Scott. I love what you just said. You spoke to everyone and affirmatively said, you have the power, and you really do. And our role is to help you extract that. Our role is to help empower you with the right information, with the right tools. And when you said that, I thought of a favorite cartoon growing up, He-Man, where, the beginning, he's got the big sword, he's a big old muscular guy, and he holds it up and he says, I have the power. Like, some of you out there listening right now, you need to go look in the mirror, and you need to hold up your invisible sword, and you need to speak to yourself that you do have the power it's resident within you, and it's time that you unlocked it. It's time that you unleashed it. Guys, we want to thank you for joining us live today. This was such a great conversation. Thanks everybody for being a part of this and providing your valuable insights and feedback. And if you'd like to learn more about the family banking system, we've got some great videos and tools for you. We've condensed our presentation that we provide for clients and prospects, you know, from 45 minutes down to about 17 minutes. So you can really get an idea of how it works, and only so that we can put you back in the driver's seat of your financial future, of your legacy. And again, as Scott just mentioned, if you relate, if it resonates with you, we want you to reach out, consider being a part of this. We become who we associate with. We think like those 4 or 5 people that we surround ourselves with. So if you're ready to level up, if you know that there's more for you and you just want to be a part of a community where you can find that encouragement and that support system, we encourage you to reach out and join us. So whether you see the replay on Aline's channel or Scott's, or you saw it live on Facebook, please do reach out and we'll be happy to make some more time for you. Until next time, guys, we hope to see you again soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks again.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.